Hi, I'm Amy.
Hey, and I'm Crystal, and we're two West End girls.
Today we're going to be making some royal icing and working on putting together gingerbread houses. We're going to give you a basic recipe and walk through the steps of cutting out, and making your own gingerbread house for the holidays. Stay with us. In this episode, we will be rolling out gingerbread dough and making royal icing. Please join us for part 2 of gingerbread After you have your dough already prepared and you've chilled it in the refrigerator for a couple of hours, probably at least 2 to 3 hours, you chill it. I put it in Ziploc bags when I pre-mix it. Anyway, it comes out of the Ziploc bag and you're going to get some parchment out. Now the parchment I have here I've already used a couple times before, but you can reuse it to save money. It's a good way to save. It's less expensive that way if you do that with your parchment. In any case, I've got my gingerbread out. I've let it warm up just for a few minutes out to room temperature. It's still kind of cool, but that's okay to work with. You're going to notice it's tacky, of course. We're going to be using the flour, though, to keep down the tackiness. You want a good pastry roller. You don't necessarily want a rolling pin. If you have just a rolling pin, you're going to have to work a little bit harder to get the gingerbread dough rolled out. But with a pastry roller, you're going to notice it's thicker in the middle, and that helps to disperse the pastry or the gingerbread dough out easier and quickly from the center of the mound. Also, you're going to need some good knives. You see those here? Knives that are great for cutting into the gingerbread dough. You're going to need your pattern pieces that I have here, and I've got ones that I've pre-cut. I took an old cutting mat when I broke it down, and I made, of course, the front and back of my gingerbread house. We're going to need 2 sides. We'll also need 2 roof pieces, too, as well, to go on top of the gingerbread house. Some plans call for a base if you want to make a larger rectangle for the house to go on. I put them straight onto a cake board. It's just a simple, easy way. You can use royal icing and attach them directly to the board. Also, when you're finished, if you have any extra dough, you can use your holiday cookie cutters to cut out extra shapes to use in coordination with decorating your house, as you can see here. I also like to use little star shapes sometimes to cut out little open windows. For example, on the front and back here, I might cut out a little window shape there, or on the sides of the gingerbread cottage I can show you. And you're going to need flour for dusting your dough to keep it from sticking, of course, too. Let's get started. So I'm going to get my parchment, and I'm going to put a little bit of flour on top of my ball of dough I've already got set out. If you want to kind of square it up, it'll make it fit to the parchment just a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and roll the dough. Takes just a moment if it's cool. It's from the fridge. Roll. Oops. Yes, it's still a little cold, but that's all right. We'll make it work. You've rolled enough gingerbread before. So roll it out, and you notice, like I said, the pastry roller really helps to push the dough from the center out. It's really good for that. Put a little bit of flour, maybe a little bit much, but you want to keep it dusted, just a very, very light layer, to keep it from sticking to your roller. And it helps with the parchment as well if you have a little flour down to begin with too. But push and roll, push and roll, push and roll. Try to get your dough down to at least a 1/4 of an inch thickness, and hopefully just a little less than that. Maybe even a couple 1/16, maybe 3/16. So if you want to get crazy, I guess you could go at 1/8 of an inch. But you have to watch it may brown too quickly that way too. You can make a crispy house that way, and crispy cookies. I'm going to roll my dough. A little bit more flour. If you have any lumpy spots, kind of get in there and roll them out so it's fairly consistent. You want it the same thickness throughout so your cookie browns even when you bake it. And I'll be baking this at 350. In my oven, I've learned, I think, that about 9 minutes does a good baking for an even gingerbread house. And you'll notice when your dough starts to run off the edge of your parchment, just kind of gently use the edge of your knife and cut away that excess, and try to keep it as square as possible. It just makes it much easier for cutting later on so that it fits the tray, the cookie sheet really well. And it also makes so that you get your pieces cut out as you need them. So the pattern I'm cutting out today is going to be a small house, and I'm going to cut out 2 of these. 2 of it, that's the front and back, 2 of the roof. I'm also going to cut out 2 sides, you see here. I want 2 of each of those, and this pattern also has a chimney included too. Okay, so kind of smooth your hand over and feel for any thick spots. Make sure those are out. I'll cut away this excess back here too. won't need that. So cut away. Some patterns, of course, you're going to need to cut out more than one sheet of dough. The one I'm going to use today, you can fit it all into one sheet, which is great. I like that about it. It's a fast way to get a little house cut out for everyone to decorate, especially if you're making multiples. I have a family party each year, so it's nice to be able to cut it out quickly on one sheet. So take your knife, and my knife is nice and clean, and if it gets dirty with the dough on it, you want to kind of wipe it off with a towel or rinse it in the sink, of course, too. Cut out a roof piece and come right beside that, and within about a half of an inch or so, give a little bit of room for growth. As the dough bakes, it's going to swell a little bit and spread because we do have baking soda in the recipe, so it will grow up and puff up a little bit, so be prepared for that. Cut out a second roof piece. Got that out of the way, and then we're going to cut out some sides. Now there are plenty of templates and designs online for houses. You can kind of test and check out ones you like and find one that's going to work for the house you want to make. It's just, gingerbread houses are unique as the artisan and the crafts person that makes them, so that's beauty is in the eye of the beholder as well too, because what one person likes, another may find a little different and they like something else. So I'm going to cut. And this way I've got my two sides cut. I've got my roof pieces cut. Kind of careful there. Now I've got my front and back that I'm going to cut. I'm going to line that up over here. And watch for your spacing too. Just remember, as long as you have a little space between each piece, it's fine. But make sure that you save enough to get everything you want on that sheet. So kind of think carefully about where you're positioning everything at. If you cut out multiples, you'll learn that very quickly, because the time you take rolling out the dough, you want to get the best bang for your buck in terms of space used. So I'm going to put this one, this is a little thick. I'm going to roll just a little bit thinner there. I'm going to put this one right up here, so I'll have all of my front and back pieces done. And you'll notice also in this pattern there's a little opening for a door. I cut my doors in the pattern piece. You don't have to, you can cut them separate. This pattern or template that I found online also allows for a separate piece for the door, like this one. But I just go ahead and cut it right into the pattern. So I've got one that has no door. This one I want a door, so I'm going to go ahead and cut. Gently just glide your knife along, and you'll have to do a little bit of manipulation, just turning your hand, being careful with your knife, of course. Probably best for moms and dads to do this, or someone with skills with a knife, so be careful. Also, I'm going to cut out, so I've got the front and back, sides, and the roof. I'm going to cut out chimney pieces. I'll need two of this one, a little square. And then where it sits across the gable, across the top, the roof of the house, the next piece is going to have a little V shape in it. And that's going to sit on the house later on. So let's cut this one out. So there's two parts to the chimney, and here are the other two. Ignore the little crummy dough pieces too. Those will kind of bake and change. There's one. And you want to cut as neatly as possible. The straight lines are important. When I cut on parchment, the pieces as I cut them on parchment, guess what? Until they go into, or they come out of the oven, they're not removed from that parchment, so they don't get warped or get changed in shape, so they don't get manipulated. The dough will stretch and spread and make those straight edges, sloppy edges, and then when you try to assemble your house, the seams don't match up and things don't go together well. So it is important that you leave it after you cut it. Okay, so this has got all of my maiden pieces from my house cut out. Now in this house, if I want to put some windows, and you can later melt candies in those windows, I might turn this one on a diagonal to make a little diamond-shaped window. And then I might want one on the back as well. So I can use my little cutters to cut that out. And just use the edge of a toothpick or the little very tip of your knife to carefully remove those little plugs and pieces you don't need. Then also on the sides, I'm going to go ahead and plan to put a little window on my sides too. So I'm going to cut 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there's my little window, and then I want one on the other side as well. 2, 3, nothing for. And you can get very creative with the little tiny small shape cutters. They have clay cutters at hobby and craft stores too for a little like Fimo and poly clay, and they're fantastic for cutting out little additions to gingerbread. And they have prefab cutters even for gingerbread houses. You just have to kind of be careful and plan out how you're going to cut that dough. So there's the other window. So bring all these pieces out. Now I'm going to leave the door intact over here. I'm going to leave that and let that bake. As soon as it comes out of the oven, after the 9 minutes, I immediately go in and cut again along that line before it crystallizes and before it hardens, and that way the door is removable later if I want to take it out or not. It's up to the individual. So I'm going to take away the excess pieces I don't need here. We're going to just go ahead and remove all of those, and I'll come back to you in just a moment after we get that removed to get ready to go in the oven. So I have carefully removed the excess dough that I didn't need. I kind of roughed up a little area there. So you can take your knife and just kind of gently line those edges back up. If you have little places you know that there's extra dough you don't need, just remove those. But you want it to bake in the oven, like I said, at 350 for about 9 minutes. My extra areas too that you see here, I had a little extra dough, and I'm going to move this one just a little bit so it doesn't swell up against the other ones. But you can see the extra places where I had extra dough. I cut out little gingerbread men too that I can use as accents on my house when we begin to decorate. So we got all the pieces cut out. We're going to carefully slide those onto our cookie sheet, slide them onto our tray, and put them in our oven for 9 minutes at 350. And watch it closely. Okay, now that our house is out of the oven, I'm going to go in and quickly take my knife and cut out the door shape. But you can see they're kind of toasted after about 9 minutes. That's how they look. And I've had time to work on another house as well too. But from here, you'll just let the pieces cool back to room temperature, and then you can store them in Ziploc bags until you're ready to party with your gingerbread house and decorate. Or once it's cooled, you can go ahead and decorate it that day. So it's entirely up to you. We're making some royal icing. The recipe for royal icing is 4 cups of powdered sugar, 3 ounces of egg whites, and you can use the pasteurized prefab ones from the store, and it's perfectly fine. Or you can use the equivalent of 3 ounces of egg whites from your own eggs, probably 3 to 4 eggs, and also 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff mixed up, or put into the mixer actually. So I have got a heavy duty mixer that I use. If you have a hand mixer at home, it's going to take a little patience because you'll have to let these mix for 5 to 7 minutes to get them nice and fluffy and make them nice and functional for your gingerbread house building. But this is the nice cement that helps hold all your gingerbread houses together. So make sure your mixing bowl is nice and clean and there's no oil or anything in there. None of the greasy residue or anything left from making gingerbread, because it will mess up your icing. So make sure your mixing bowl is very clean. I'm going to go ahead and put 4 cups of powdered sugar in. Oops, and I'm a little bit sloppy. So that's got our powdered sugar in. Then we're going to add our 3 ounces of egg whites and 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Start off on a low so that it starts to mix together, and then once it's well mixed, we'll speed up. So I'm mixing the egg whites and the powdered sugar and the cream tartar together, and they're just starting to come together. I want to make sure to stop 2 or 3 times in this process and scrape the bowl down with a spatula. If you're using a hand mixer, it's easier just to stop and set it down and use a spatula, scrape off the spatula too, of course, and start back up again mixing until it's well mixed. And it's going to look runny, but as you whip it, it's going to get frothy and make a nice royal icing. So from here, we whip those egg whites with the powdered sugar and cream of tartar nice and frothy, and we're going to put some in a Ziploc bag. Make sure that all of your tools are clean when you're working with the egg whites and the royal icing, because any kind of oil and stuff will affect the egg and make it not cling or stick in your designs. So, and it does seem to work for the house, but we've got a nice bag of royal icing ready to go. You can just clip the corner off and you're ready to decorate with.